Hi, good afternoon. I guess it is officially afternoon. You are hearing the voice of Catherine Elms on the other line. I'm an investment associate at Mass DEC. I am joined by my colleague Katie Dobbins, who is our investment analyst, who some of you may or may not have received an email from and already been in discussions with. So I'm glad to see that there are a number of folks on the line. I do know that we have quite a number of folks registered for this webinar, and I only see a handful that have joined so far. So we'll wait a couple of moments before we really start to get rolling. But that being said, is there, can someone out in the ether confirm that you can hear me?
This is Les. I can, Catherine. How are you?
Oh, hello, Les. Good morning. Thank you for confirming. For those of you who do not know, Les will be joining us later on in this webinar. He is actually one of our AccelerateMass recipients, or CEOs of one of our AccelerateMass companies, I should say. Okay, great. Well, one thing that I do want to mention before we get rolling is that this webinar is, in fact, being recorded. So as we go along, please just be cognizant of that. I know that the audio is muted for everyone, but if you have any questions, I believe you can submit those questions via the chat function, and we will be able to see those. If you do have questions, I strongly encourage you to ask those questions, because odds are if you are wondering something, someone else is as well, and we can capture those questions, answer them on this webinar that will then be recorded and posted for others to see, and they'll benefit as well. So just to get rolling, I again am Catherine Elms, and I'm joined by my colleague, Katie Dobbins. We make up the AccelerateMass investments team. And we are housed at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. So I want to begin with just a quick primer. A lot of folks are not familiar with Mass DEC and what we do here. We're actually a quasi-public agency, and we really focus on getting clean energy technology companies and projects deployed in and throughout Massachusetts and beyond, really. We function more or less as an economic development agency, and we have a number of programs, including our renewable energy generation division. We actually run a wind turbine testing facility. We also are very active in the ecosystem, supporting accelerators and incubators. That's in our innovation and industry support division. And Katie and I sit squarely on the investments team here at Mass DEC. And our priority really is to support early stage companies, which I imagine a number of you on the line are. And I'll talk about how we support those companies in this next slide. So this is what we call our fancy slide, and it outlines the many different investment and innovation programs that we have here at Mass DEC. So starting the earliest stage program that you'll see on the left bottom of the screen is the Catalyst program, where we provide up to $65,000 for proof of concept projects. Then everything that's listed in blue, I want to clarify, is a grant program. So that sits squarely with our innovation and industry support division. Everything in green is actually an investments program. So I'm going to skip over the other blue boxes for now, but please know that we do provide cost share for different types of grants and awards like DOE and NSF. We do provide AccelerateMass grants that can fund pilot demonstration projects, and we do have a DeployMass program that is focused on deploying new technologies with public entities. But to jump to the heart of the matter for this webinar, that's the AccelerateMass program. The AccelerateMass program is our earliest stage investment program here at Mass CEC. So in other words, this is the earliest stage that you'll be able to receive an investment from us. And the purpose of forming this program was really to provide visibility to seed stage companies, many of which are pre-revenue, and to support the accelerators that we have in our ecosystem, because we realize that they do add a great deal of value to the companies that are participating. Do I see potentially a hand going up next to Vishal? Is that what that is? Okay, I think I might see a hand going up, so we're going to have a look at that and get back to you on that. But to just continue with this slide, for the AccelerateMass program, we really see the value in supporting companies at this early stage. So we don't want you to lose the momentum that you have after you've participated in an accelerator program, and we realize that it oftentimes takes capital to get to the next step. So we begin with this program. We'll make up to 5 awards this year. Those will be $50,000 for the Phase 1 awards, and recipients will have the opportunity to receive or apply to the second phase, which is $100,000. Both of the investments take the form of convertible notes, and then beyond that, we have had AccelerateMass companies go on to receive equity investments. So I just want to do a quick plug for our full equity investments program. Our average equity investment size is about $500,000 to $600,000. We tend to do 1 to 3 deals per year. And then finally, we do offer venture debt programs as well. So just to give you a few examples of AccelerateMass companies, the 3 listed here, Tesla, IdleSmart, and Electric Vehicles, have all gone on to receive equity investments from Mass CEC. We actually have the CEO of Tesla, Les Fritzmeyer, on the line, who will speak to us later on. And we led the Series A round for both Tesla and IdleSmart, and we're very active in the Series Seed for electric vehicles as well. A familiar name that you might know of, Energy Sage. Energy Sage is one of our equity investments. We did provide an initial upfront investment of $500,000 and then have gone on to do follow-on investments to continue to support the company. And some of you might know Bevy. To give you another example, Bevy received $1 million venture debt loan from our team here at Mass CEC. And who is the team? I want to make sure you know who is on the other end of the line. So I'm speaking right now. I'm Catherine Elms. I'm an investment associate here. I've been here for over a year now, and I'm joined by Katie Dobbins, our investment analyst, who's actually been at Mass CEC for a number of years, but recently joined the investments team back in July. Some of you might know some of the other familiar faces and names on this slide. Our team is led by Tibor Todt. He's our managing director of investments, is often out in the ecosystem, so I wouldn't be surprised if many of you know him. We have Allison Ernst, our senior manager of investments, and Lisa Khanna, our investment associate. So to jump into the heart of the matter, I want to talk a bit about what AccelerateMass is. AccelerateMass is a convertible note program, and the purpose of the program is to support accelerator graduates, to help you really maintain momentum between when you are in an accelerator, getting a lot of support potentially from mentors and others in the program, and you want to keep that momentum going and bridge from your graduation to meeting critical business objectives or milestones that will really help prove your technology or prove your company and help you get to the next step. The program was started in 2015. We've done 3 cycles of it so far, and we've had 11 recipients. And, what we've heard consistently is that this really does help companies bridge that valley of death, to help them get from their graduation to, whether it's their first round of financing or a critical technical or commercial milestone. So to give you a sense of some prior recipients, some of these logos and names might be familiar to you. In our first year, we made awards to Sunwealth, Blackburn, Tessolar, and Tank Utility. I should note that all of those recipients received the Phase 2 investment of $100,000 and did complete the program except for Tank Utility. So I want to just provide you with context as to what would happen if, for example, you do raise a funding round and you choose to, you can raise a funding round and pay us back. That is what Tank Utility did shortly after receiving our funding. I just mentioned on the prior slide, we did wind up leading the Series A for Tessolar. Then moving to our 2016 awardees, we've had electric vehicles, battery resourcers, Idle Smart, and Cool Composites. They all approached Phase 2 and received Phase 2, have been quite successful. We, again, have made full equity investments in electric vehicles and Idle Smart. And then our most recent cycle, we invested in Alchemy Environmental, Pecos Wind Power, and Solstice, all of which are making great progress towards their business objectives, and we look forward to receiving Phase 2 applications. So to dig in a bit more on some of our portfolio companies, our AccelerateMass companies and success stories, I'm highlighting two here that have not received equity investments from Mass DEC, because obviously we think those that have received equity investments have made great progress, but this just goes to show that even if you don't go on to receive an equity investment right after AccelerateMass from our Mass DEC investments team, that does not at all mean that we wouldn't be interested in the future or that you're not making great progress. So, for example, Battery Resourcers has had very successful traction with fundraising. They've received a Series A and have received a number of awards from NSF, USABC, and Mass Ventures. They have great customer traction. And for some context, what Battery Resourcers does is they recover cathode materials from recycled batteries, and they've had OEMs validate that their recovered materials perform just as well as, if not better than, the virgin materials. So we're very excited about Battery Resourcers. On another note, there's Sunwealth. Sunwealth is actually a clean energy investment firm that's focused on expanding access to renewable energy. And since our initial investment in 2016, they've gone on to provide over $15 million in financing to support over 60 solar projects in 30 different communities. Those projects have actually created over 100 jobs at local solar developers, and we're just really excited to see them grow and continue. And if any of you are at Greentown Labs or go over to Greentown Labs or know of them, you'll know that Sunwealth panels are on the roof there. So the program objectives for AccelerateMass, again, going back to really trying to foster support at very early stage companies. We think that the funding is really timely in that it does provide runway, provide traction just as you're graduating. We found that our involvement does signal support from an institutional investor. We've had companies go out and essentially syndicate rounds based on our convertible note terms. We do think that attracting that additional capital is critical, because for almost every single investment we've made, we very much realize that a $50,000 Phase 1 convertible note is not going to be sufficient in getting you to market. So we really do encourage AccelerateMass recipients to attract additional capital. And we really have a strong co-investor network, so we try to work with our AccelerateMass companies, make appropriate investor introductions, and try to help you get to that point. And finally, we are an economic development agency here in Massachusetts, so we want to retain and attract early stage companies in Massachusetts. Beyond that, we want to support accelerators. So we are hoping that this program encourages accelerators to support more Massachusetts-based clean tech applicants. We really think that accelerators provide a tangible value to startups, graduates have essentially gone through the basics of business models, revenue models, team composition, market sizing, etc. And we find that this is a very valuable threshold for us to determine whether companies have actually given enough credence to the business side of things rather than just the technical side. So again, we want to support the accelerators that are doing this work. The eligible accelerator programs are those listed here. I won't read them all, but hopefully everyone on the line has participated or intends to participate in one of these eligible accelerator programs. And then in terms of your eligibility for this program, it's not just that you have graduated from an eligible accelerator program, but you also do need to be based in Massachusetts. That being said, if you do plan to relocate to Massachusetts in the near future, that is also okay. But we do need to demonstrate that you have been able to meet our minimum business requirements. And the way that we define that is that you must maintain a majority of your business functions in the state as applicable. So those functions include your corporate headquarters, your primary R&D center, your primary manufacturing facility, and that's one where I'll say, if you don't manufacture anything, then that won't obviously be applicable to you. So that's why we clarify as applicable. And then finally, your primary sales and marketing office. So I'll just list that again because I know this is a common question. You have to have 3 out of the 4 or 2 out of the 3, depending on how it's applicable to you. Your corporate headquarters, your primary R&D center, your primary manufacturing facility, and your primary sales and marketing office. So you are also eligible to apply for funding if you intend to move to Massachusetts, as I mentioned, but you won't be able to actually receive the investment until you actually demonstrate that you have made that move. And we find that companies do consider this as some initial funding to help get them set up, particularly if they do plan to move. You do need to be an early stage company, so having raised less than $3 million in total funding, having fewer than 10 full-time employees. Again, you need to have completed an eligible accelerator program during the current calendar year. I will add one other disclaimer for this. There are some programs that are just starting and the graduates won't graduate until early 2019. That's okay. You are still eligible to apply for this program, but you are not eligible to apply if you graduated in 2017 or if you graduated, in January of this year from a 2017 cycle. And then finally, all applications are subject to our standard due diligence review, and we will talk a little bit more about that moving on. But one thing that I want to mention through the diligence process, we found that companies get a lot of value from filling out our application. We've heard that it helps them kind of prep for and gain insight into what the process will be like working with other investors, getting a sense of what questions they will ask. And we are also open to sharing diligence and also allowing other potential investors to piggyback off of our terms if that's appropriate for you and your company. Couple of program details. We will make up to 5 Phase 1 awards each year. The investments take the form of convertible notes. So for those of you unfamiliar with what a convertible note is, that is an upfront loan, and there is accrued interest that will then together convert into equity once you receive a qualified financing. We have full details about the terms of this note online. You can see our summary of terms. We do require some basic reporting So bi-monthly written updates, these are fairly short. We tend to get about 2-page updates from companies bi-monthly. We do have quarterly check-in calls so that we can really keep a pulse on you and your team and your progress, hear what your needs are, and try to help where we can. I should emphasize that we try to be as active value-add investors as we possibly can be. So once you join our portfolio, we really try to be your teammates here. We root for you. We try to support you. We go through the ups and downs. And so having bi-monthly written updates and quarterly check-ins really does help us keep a pulse on you, know what your needs are, and that allows us to step in and help whenever we can. And then we do have semi-annual requests for information, which help us track the performance of all of our companies and also demonstrate some of the metrics and performance of those companies. And finally, we will provide coaching and mentoring as needed. So for example, we have helped companies as they are looking to raise funding, review some of their investment pitch materials, and so forth. And then you are also eligible only if you receive phase 1 to apply for a phase 2 investment. Again, convertible note, but this time it's $100,000. And the contingent factor there is that you must have successfully completed the business objectives that we've set for you for that phase 1 award, and I'll get into what those business objectives are in a couple of slides. But just a little bit more detail on the note in case you are curious. Again, all the terms are online, but there is a 5% annual interest rate. There is a discount, so there's a 0% discount if you have a qualified financing within a couple of months of receiving this investment, but the discount will go up to 10%. Between 6 to 18 months after the effective date, and up to 20% if it is over 18 months from the effective date. We will have a conversion cap for all phase 1 and phase 2 investments. That being said, the specific conversion cap is negotiated on a case-by-case basis with each awardee. And in case you're curious as to what the qualified financing threshold is, it is $750,000. So the award process. Right now, applications are open, and they are due at 9 a.m. on November 5th. That's a Monday. So hopefully in case you've forgotten to submit on a Sunday, you'll get that calendar reminder on a Monday morning. We launch the solicitation just once a year, and online you will find the full application, so that's the written proposal that we evaluate. And if we review that favorably, we will choose to bring you in for an in-person presentation. And then we might follow up with a couple more questions, a little additional diligence if it's required. And all in all, we expect that the solicitation and review process will take about 3 months, and then we will announce who the recipients are. In between that, we obviously will notify you if you are selected as a finalist, and we'll schedule those presentations for you. We're slating those presentations in early to mid-December with hopes of announcing the recipients in January or February of next year. Once you are selected for the award, that is when we will go through and talk about the terms, discuss the conversion cap, and work with you on your business objectives. Again, I'll get into those shortly. And just a reminder, the phase 2 award process is not a solicitation, not a yearly solicitation, but that is contingent on when you complete your business objectives. So oftentimes we get inquiries about, well, what's your expected timeline for completion of phase 1? There's no set in stone timeline, but this is an example timeline that we have seen where Recipients are notified in January that they will be getting the investment. We'll sign the contract in April. Sometimes it does take a couple of months. We're hoping to get everything done by March this year. You'll then get into the regular streak of reporting bi-monthly and having quarterly check-ins with us, and then potentially around October of the year that you're awarded, you will be approaching completion of your business objectives, and then you will be able to begin and submit your Phase 2 application. We will review that. If it's reviewed favorably, again, we do work towards additional business objectives. And then the Phase 2 contract would be signed, and oftentimes we'll see companies begin to raise the Series A within a year of having received our initial Phase 1 investment. So now, actually, you know what, let me go back to that slide just a little bit longer, because I realize that probably in discussing the review process, or the timeline, you're very interested about the review process. So in terms of evaluation criteria, I want to emphasize that we are not looking for unicorn applications. We're not looking for someone to apply and have, perfect marks on every aspect across the board. But we will first look at your eligibility, and then we'll look at the technical merit behind whatever your solution is. Will it work? Is it disruptive? Is it novel? Is it defensible? Do you have any patents, or do you have any sort of IP roadmap? Do you have any sort of technical or business competitive advantage that you'll be able to sustain? Then we'll also look at the commercialization side of things. We'll look at your market, and we'll determine, does this market exist? Is it sizable? Is it large enough? Is it addressable? We want to make sure that you have a clear value proposition and that you have clearly identified who your customers will be. We also pay attention to what we believe is the impact and the viability of your award. So we'll look at your plan. Does your plan make sense? And by plan, I mean, your everything, not just related to commercialization and technological development, but also in terms of the people who are there and your team and your budget. Will that really allow you to meet the business objectives that we've outlined for you and that you really need to achieve? In terms of team, we understand that oftentimes teams are imperfect, particularly in early stages, and that's absolutely fine. We do always like to see highly experienced entrepreneurs, but we also understand that first-time entrepreneurs can also be quite successful. We just need to see that the people needed to execute on your plan are on board, or that you have plans to attract new team members and advisors that can help fill the gaps. We understand that oftentimes companies do work with advisors instead of bringing on a bunch of full-time employees right off the bat, and that's fine as well. And then we look at your clean energy impact. And I say clean energy because it's not just clean tech. We are the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. We find it very helpful if you ground your clean energy impact in something tangible. For example, greenhouse gas emissions mitigated. We did link to, in the application, a calculator that can help you quantify and better articulate what your clean energy impact is. For Phase 2, we will obviously consider your performance throughout the AccelerateMass Phase 1 program. And then finally, we just want to make sure that this really is supporting the goals of the program. So again, making sure that that if you ever have opportunities, you're willing to give back to the accelerators who've gotten you to this point. And we often do see some of our AccelerateMass recipients serving as judges in accelerator programs or paying it forward, and we always like to see that. But again, that's later down the line. So now let's chat about the business objectives. We are looking for SMART business objectives that are specific, measurable, achievable is a very important one, relevant and time-bound. And we're not going to dictate to you what those business objectives must be. You obviously know your ventures better than anyone else, but we do like to see business objectives that address your technological development, business development, and team development. There can be other categories, and you can have, multiple technical development objectives. That's certainly fine. So let's give you some examples of those. For a technological business objective, we might see someone propose to design, build, and test a system or a product. Maybe that is to get you to the stage where you're ready for a pilot project, or maybe what's really critical for you is the cost modeling behind it. We'll ask that you break down your business objectives into time-bound goals. So you'll see that there are some example dates here to maybe first define the specifications of your system and source that system and then assemble it. And then if you have that running for some time, obviously you might want to improve upon it. Maybe it's just your MVP. That's why it's fine to see another technical objective later down the line, saying that you need to iterate on that or improve it. For an example business objective, oftentimes we see these pertaining to customers or very valuable partners. So we want to see, for example, work orders obtained. Letters of intent sometimes are fine, but we like to see something a little bit more tangible. So maybe you get a work order from 3 out of the top 10 strategic opportunities, or maybe this business objective is even prefaced with identifying what those top 10 strategic opportunities even are. And then we also want a better sense of your understanding about the sales cycle, what it takes to get a customer. So maybe evaluating the timelines with each potential customer that you expect. For team objectives, I won't go into this one too much because it's fairly straightforward, but maybe you need to hire a salesperson for a major sales channel by a certain time, or maybe you desperately need a CTO, or maybe you need someone who's really good with business development. We just want to make sure that you have a team plan in place and that we know what that is and you can execute on that, and it's fine if there's something like this that is a business objective of yours. And then finally, there's other examples. So if you're developing a database, oftentimes we do have software companies applying and they'll say, well, it's not hardware. That's fine. You can still break it down and do things like outline the structure and organization of the database, and then validate that that actually is in line with your prospective customer or your prospective user's needs. And then you can begin to populate it, and maybe you say you want to target populating it with X amount of data by a certain time. So again, you're all in very different companies, and we don't want to dictate what is right for you, but within your application, we expect that you will dictate to us what you believe your most valuable business objectives over the coming months will be, and we will work with you on those during the contracting process to make sure that we understand what those business objectives are, that we think they really are appropriate, and we might, change them a bit, but we really work alongside of you just to make sure that they're really meaningful and achievable. So now I will hope that my good friend Les Fritzmeyer has not tuned out and that he is still on the line. I hear him
I'm still here.
Thank you, Les. So I'd like to quickly introduce Les. He is the founder and CEO of TESOLAR, which was a 2015 recipient of an AccelerateMass award. He has over a decade of experience in the solar industry. He's got 30 years of successful business development and product commercialization experience. He's actually taken 3 independent products from concept all the way to production. His experience includes 12 years in aerospace power systems and 7 years in electric power industry product development. And I could go on and on. He's an advisor to a number of companies. He holds over 25, I think, at this point, patents, and is also an all-around really nice guy. So I will pass it on to Les, and I hope that you can talk a little bit about your experience with the AccelerateMass program.
Sure, thank you. It was a glowing recommendation. I appreciate it. I'll try to live up to it in the future. So let me first, maybe I can give you everyone just a real quick background on Touch Solar. So this company was founded in 2014. It was a successor to a previous company that my other 2 co-founders had founded. We actually started out trying to develop a more cost-effective, higher performance solar module. And we'll jump forward a little bit from that. So that started in 2014. In February of last year, so about a year and a half ago, we pivoted away from that technology to focusing on the mounting systems for solar modules. The reason we did that is because we got an awful lot of feedback from customers. Every time we go out and talk to them about this really cool new solar module technology we kind of poo-pooed it a little bit, said, yeah, everybody's working on advanced solar modules, but that mounting stuff that you're working on to go along with the module is really cool. Tell us more. So after about 6 months of that, we realized that we really needed to shift gears and give them what they wanted. And that was actually kind of in the midst of our AccelerateMass activities. So we actually pivoted the company during the process after we had the first 50K. And I think it was before we did the 100K round. Catherine can correct me if she knows better than that. But in any case, Massey EC stuck with us. They understood why we were doing the pivot. They saw the value in it. We've been moving ahead ever since. AccelerateMass, like virtually every other program that we've been involved with Massey EC, very easy to work with the group. It actually, for us, was part of what kept us from falling deeply into the valley of death and not coming out the other side. Again, it's a very straightforward process. You'll find the team there to be very open, to be engaged, and to help you through the process every step of the way, from the time that you're putting together the proposal to once you've got the funding, to making sure that you're meeting your objectives and finding other resources as needed. So it's, for us, been an absolutely wonderful experience. Again, there's really no drag on the system here. The reporting requirements are minimal compared to others. For example, the U.S. Department of Energy. We do have a grant from them too, and that's much more onerous reporting requirements, believe me. So I think, as also Catherine said, that, and I think it's on your screen, we have now completed our Series A, led by Massey EC. And Catherine was involved in that process. It's been a very, very long process for us, a very difficult fundraise, just because of the situation both in solar energy and economically around the world. But we have completed it. We have 2 excellent strategic partners, one of which is a major customer that has pledged at least $3 million in hardware purchases from us over the next 12 months, and also a strategic manufacturing partner. We couldn't be happier about where we are. We have shipped our first product. We're scheduled to ship to 2 more customers within the month. And we feel like we're on track now to hit profitability at some point next year and just accelerate from there. Catherine, what else would you like me to hit on as we're discussing here?
That's fantastic. Thank you for the overview. One other thing that I'll just point out for everyone on the line, in case you're curious to know what some of Tesla's business objectives were when they were going through the AccelerateMass process, that is what's on the screen right now. And Les, I'd ask you if you think those business objectives that you're looking at now are still meaningful to you.
Absolutely. Everything that's on there was something that was a critical step towards us actually being able to manufacture and sell this hardware. And as you pointed out, these were our objectives. They weren't objectives that were imposed on us. Everything came from us. And again, the Mass EEC convertible note really helped us out.
Great. Well, thank you, Les. I appreciate you sharing your perspective on this, and I hope you are okay. Are you okay staying on the line just in case any questions come up for you?
Sure. Happy to do it.
Great. Thank you. By the way, I do see two questions listed right now. I will answer both of those. I just want to finish running through this very quickly. There's basically only one more slide left. So the biggest question is how to apply. You can go to our website, and that's massec.com/AccelerateMass. You'll find the application there. We do ask that you carefully review the solicitation for applications. The summary of terms is there to make sure that we are very upfront about the terms of this note. They are standard across all of the recipients. The one item that we do on a case-by-case basis for each company is what your specific conversion cap will be. And the phase one application is also there to give you an example of the content in the application. If you haven't looked at it yet, we ask for an executive summary, an investor presentation. We want you to really outline your problem and your solution. There are a bunch of questions we ask you to fill out, and then in addition to that, to attach a couple of documents like resumes or bios of your key team members. We do ask you to identify a primary advisor. That's someone who you are working with, who's not a full-time team member. Maybe it's a mentor from one of your accelerator programs, who just agrees to continue to advise you throughout this process. We will not be harassing them or anything. We will be only reaching out to them as needed, trying to keep a pulse on them and what they think about what's going on at your specific company. Hopefully it's an open dialogue, open communication, so that they do keep us informed and in the loop, particularly if there are any concerns or needs. That's just another resource for us to be up to date on what you're working on. We ask you to also submit a detailed company budget for the milestone period. So we want to make sure that you actually do have the capital to execute or plans to get the capital that you need to execute. We ask for projected financials for the next 5 years. I know that seems like a lot, but I would imagine that a lot of you have gone through that sort of financial forecasting exercise at your accelerator programs. We ask for historical company financials, a cap table, a list of any of your IP filings. So that's a very quick overview of the application, but obviously please have a look at all of those materials more in depth yourselves. If you have any questions in the interim, feel free to reach out at AccelerateMass@massec.com. We're glad to have a follow-up call if need be, or just answer questions via email. And then you need to submit your application with all of the attachments and any other materials you want to submit by Monday, November 5th at 9 a.m. Just email that application directly to that email address, AccelerateMass@massec.com. And then going back to the process that I discussed earlier, we will review your application materials. We will notify you if you are a finalist, hopefully by the end of November or early December. And we'll also plan a follow-up meeting where you can come in and pitch and discuss your company and business plans. So that's the end of our spiel here. We'll take some questions now, and I'll read off some of the questions that were asked and answer them. So the first question was about the minimum business requirements, and can I clarify what those are? So yes, whether you are currently in Massachusetts or planning to relocate, the requirements are the same. You just need to demonstrate that you maintain a majority of the following 4 business functions in the state of Massachusetts. The first is corporate headquarters. The second is your primary R&D, research and development center. The third is your primary manufacturing facility. And the fourth is your primary sales and marketing office. So if all of those apply to you, if you do engage in manufacturing, then you need to demonstrate that 3 out of those 4 criteria are met. If manufacturing does not apply to you, then we need to see that at least 2 out of those 3 remaining, the corporate headquarters, the R&D center, and your primary sales and marketing office are based in Massachusetts. So if that's not clear, please let me know, and I'm glad to discuss further. And how long should you keep satisfying the eligibility criteria? So this is essentially in perpetuity. We do understand that companies might move out of Massachusetts at some point. We do have a special redemption right. So if you were to, for example, secure a large fundraising round from an out-of-state investor that required you to move to where that capital is, we certainly would not force you to stay in Massachusetts. You can choose to repay us, and that's fine. And there's more information about that special redemption requirement in the summary of terms. The next question that I see is about I think there's maybe 2 things being conflated here. One is about the conversion max and conversion at a discount and the dollar amount. So I want to clarify that that $750 amount that I mentioned is what we define as a qualified financing. So any fundraising that is $750,000 or more will serve as a qualified financing. So that is the number that specifies how large the financing needs to be for our note to convert. And then in terms of the discount rate, that is a discount that's based on timeline. So if the question was regarding the 20%, if you achieve that qualified financing of $750,000 or more, 18 or more months after the effective date of our phase 1 investment, then our investment will convert with a 20% discount. But again, that's graduated. So if you receive a qualified financing, or if you convert within 6 months of the effective date, within 6 months of receiving the investment, then there will be no discount. If it's between 6 to 18 months, it will be a 10% discount, and if it's over 18 months, then it's a 20% discount. Okay, looking at the next question. This is quite an in-depth application. Yes, it is, because I do want to clarify that this is an investment, and an investment that many do treat as a gateway to a full equity investment from MassDEC, so we do try to be fairly rigorous. Is there a list anywhere more specifically describing what type of companies you're looking for? So there's no specific list. That being said, if you do go to our investments page on the website, there is a link in there that does go to our investment themes or priority areas, which I'll just quickly outline right now. So we're very interested in next generation renewables, That doesn't just have to be generation. It can be something like a test solar, which is a mounting hardware that supports next generation renewables. We also look to grid resilience. So oftentimes people think of storage or security, any sort of microgrid solution, just resiliency of the grid. We look to efficient mobility. We also focus on the water energy nexus, as well as sustainable buildings and industrial efficiency. So those are all very broad categories. Please know that we are not going into this cycle. We never go into looking for investments with a specific idea of what company we really want to find out in the ether. We're open to any new ideas that you might have, and if you want to discuss more in depth whether or not you think your company would be a good fit for this program, I'm glad to have a chat about that, because I know oftentimes all of the categories that I just mentioned are very broad, and you may or may not fit into one of those, and even if you don't fit squarely in one of those off the top of your mind, you might still fit, so we can chat about that. And then next questions are, so is there a cap on the Series A valuation? Okay, so I should clarify that when I am addressing the cap, that is the conversion cap for our convertible note. So we're not trying to put any sort of constraint on what your Series A terms may be when you do get to that date where you are pursuing a Series A financing. You are welcome to set your own terms for that Series A, but our cap applies to when we actually do convert that note, which will likely be into your Series A. Okay, that is the end of our question list. Those were all very good questions. So it is it is not a minimum cap of $750,000. The $750,000 is the qualified financing threshold. No problem at all. This is not straightforward information if you do not oftentimes engage with investors. So I'm glad that people are asking for clarification on all of this. The $750,000 is the minimum amount of money, the minimum amount that will serve as a qualified financing that would trigger our conversion. So hypothetically, if you go out and you raise $500,000, that's great, but it won't convert our note because you haven't met that $750,000 threshold. Yes, correct. Any other questions out there?
Maybe you want to talk about what a conversion cap then is, if there's confusion about between the 750 and.
Are there any other questions out in the ether about a conversion cap? Okay. Oh, does the 750K include the 50K phase 1 and 100K phase 2? No, it does not. So I should clarify, though, that every fundraising is different, and so we're always up for taking things on a case-by-case basis, but at face value, that 750K would not include our 50K phase 1, since that's money that has already gone into the company, and the 100K phase 2, oftentimes we do find ourselves in a situation where a company is raising a qualified financing that is targeting around $750,000 to $1 million, and you can actually treat that qualified financing as a trigger for your phase 2. So in other words, we will actually choose, if we think it's appropriate, to waive the requirements of meeting your phase 1 business objectives if you achieve a qualified financing. So that can count in lieu of achieving your business objectives. If that happens and you want our 100K to go in around the same time as this qualified financing, that 100K still would not be included in that $750,000. That would be exclusive of us. That being said, we really don't like to split hairs on things, so we're always open to discussions once a time like that would arise. Is a 750K threshold cumulative? So if you raise 250K this year, then 500K next year, what would happen? This is another one of those scenarios where the 750K, the way that it's written, is meant to be a more of a volumetric number than a single instance number. So it's either a single financing or a series of successive financings. So if you did raise 250K this year and then 500K next year, that could in theory count as the 750K threshold, taking it cumulatively. You're welcome. And I know that a lot of this is, for many of you, this might be the first time where you're talking about terms like this. So myself, Katie, Tibor on our team, we're always glad to have a conversation about this if you have any additional questions. I do realize that we are 3 minutes from the hour, so I just want to take a moment and see if there are any other questions on the line. You say 5-year financials, the application says 12 months, so there's a couple of different things that we ask for. We ask for actual financials, so kind of historical financials. We also ask for projections. So the 5-year would be more of the projection, and we want more of a detailed budget for the next 12 months or so. The rationale behind that is we just want to make sure that you know what amount of capital you need to keep running for the next 12 months, and that you have a plan to have that amount of capital and keep things running. So again, the 12-month horizon is more nuanced because we do want to see that you have a budget and a good understanding of your expenses, and then the 5-year projections are basically your way of financially projecting where you think you will be in 5 years in terms of expenses and revenue. My pleasure. Okay, well, I think that's the last question I've seen. If another one pops up, I'm glad to answer it. Again, I'm also glad to discuss anything offline as well. And I just want to thank you all very much for your time. I know that this has been a long webinar, and some of this has really gotten into the nitty-gritty, so I appreciate you taking the lunch hour out of your day to join us for this. And from the team here at Mass DEC, with Katie and Tibor also in the room, I want to say thanks to you all for participating, and we very much look forward to seeing your applications.
Thank you, everyone.